Chilling tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling tales for dark nights.
Good evening, listeners, and welcome back to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. I'm your host, Nick Goroff, filling in for Jeff Sturtevant, and tonight's episode is a special one, because we're once again joined by a voice many of you know, and fear. Dr. Creepen returns to the show to bring you 3 new tales from the mind of Darius McCorkindale. And if you've heard him before, you already know what you're in for. That unmistakable chill in your bones. That creeping sense that something's breathing just behind your neck. You might remember him from episode 344, Dark Roots, where he introduced us to blood-soaked farmland and spectral canines. Or maybe you caught his earlier appearances all the way back in Pharaoh's Curse, or Feeding Ground, or even deeper cuts from the vault. However you found him, there's no forgetting the voice, or the nightmares that follow it. So tonight, as we dig into stories about betrayal, buried guilt, and monsters that won't stay dead, remember, it's Dr. Creepen guiding you through the dark. And if you're new to his work, don't worry. We'll tell you after the first story exactly where to find more. But for now, before we start digging up what's best left forgotten, here's a quick reminder. If our stories leave a mark, or keep you awake longer than you'd like, show us some love. Leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Watching on YouTube? Click that like button, drop us a comment, and subscribe so you never miss a new nightmare. And yes, ring that bell. Hungry for more? Visit us at chillingtalesfordarknights.com and become a patron. For just $7.99 a month, or even less with an annual plan, you'll unlock ad-free episodes, exclusive stories, and early access to each new installment. You'll also help us keep the darkness fed. We're creeping around social media too. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Follow for behind-the-scenes updates, sneak peeks, and things we can't say out loud, but really, really want to. Now then, turn off the lights, turn on the dark, and let's begin. Our first tale tonight comes from returning author Darius McCorkindale. It's a quiet story at first. A man coming home after doing his time. A letter, a ribbon. A simple question. Do you still want me back? But second chances have a cost. And sometimes, the person waiting for you on the other side of that bus ride isn't who you think it is. Performed tonight by our special guest, Dr. Creepen. This is The Yellow Ribbon by Darius McCorkindale.
Bus trundled down the lonely road, its engine humming a monotonous tune as it carried its passengers closer to their destinations. Among them sat Tom, his hands trembling slightly as he clutched a worn, much-read draft of a letter. The words were etched into his mind. I'm coming home. I've done my time. Now I've got to know what is and isn't mine. If you received my letter telling you I'd soon be free, then you'll know just what to do if you still want me. Tom had spent 3 long years in prison, his life turned upside down by a bank robbery gone wrong. At least the millions he'd stolen were hidden away, safely stashed in his house, waiting for him. If he had just bided his time, all could still work out well in the end. He wasn't alone in his cell during those years, though. He'd shared it with a man named Mark, a cunning and ruthless criminal who'd listened intently to Tom's every word about the money and his plans. Mark had seemingly turned over a new leaf during his time in incarceration and had devised a plan of his own. It would help Tom craft the perfect letter to his wife, Mary, carefully suggesting the words to ensure she would understand the message. Tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree, Tom had written, his hope pinned on this one simple request. If she still wanted him, she would tie the ribbon, and he would know it was safe to come home. If not, he would stay on the bus and vanish from her life forever. After all their time locked up together in such close proximity, it turned out that Mark was released just a few days earlier than Tom. He had assured Tom that they would work together on the outside, that he would help get him back on his feet, that Mark had great plans that would shape the lives of both of them. As the bus finally approached his hometown, Tom's heart was pounding in his chest. He stared out of the window, searching desperately for the old oak tree in his front yard. He needed to see the ribbon to know that Mary still wanted him, that there was a future waiting for him. The bus driver, sensing Tom's anxiety, slowed as they neared the house. "Bus driver, please look for me," Tom had whispered. "I could not bear to see what I might see." The bus rounded the final bend, and there it was, the old oak tree. Tom's eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't just one ribbon. The tree was adorned with hundreds of yellow ribbons, fluttering in the breeze like a beacon of hope. The passengers cheered, sharing in his joy. "I'm really still in prison, and my love, she holds the key. Simple yellow ribbon is what I need to set me free," Tom had written. Now here it was, the true symbol of his freedom, of Mary's love. He stepped off the bus, his legs unsteady as he approached the house. As he got closer, he noticed the front door was slightly ajar, and a sense of foreboding washed over him. He called out for Mary as he entered, but the silence that greeted him was chilling. He walked through the house, his heart sinking with each step. The living room was in disarray, furniture overturned and papers scattered across the floor. He moved to the bedroom, dread pooling in his stomach. There, he found Mary. She lay motionless on the bed, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling, a pool of blood spreading beneath her. Tom fell to his knees, a strangled cry escaping his lips. Beside her, he noticed a piece of paper hastily scrawled. With shaking hands, he picked it up and read the word. "The yellow ribbon has led me right here. Thanks for everything. Turns out I was the one who got back on the bus. So now you need to forget about us. Mark." Tom's mind raced, piecing together the horror. Mark had been released early, had come to the house and had murdered Mary before stealing the hidden money. The yellow ribbons fluttered mockingly outside, a cruel reminder of the hope and love that had been there, now shattered by betrayal and greed. Despair overwhelmed him as he realized the true cost of his trust. Mark had taken everything from him, leaving nothing but sorrow and death in his wake. Tom staggered out of the house, the ribbons a blur through his tears, and fell to the ground, the weight of his loss crushing him. The bus had long since departed, leaving behind the haunting echoes of a promise broken and a love destroyed. And Mark, with millions in his grasp, had disappeared into the night, his cruel note the only trace of his treachery.
That was The Yellow Ribbon, written by Darius McCorkindale and performed by our guest narrator, Dr. Creepen. I don't know about you, but next time someone says just follow the signs, I'm turning the other way. Dr. Creepen has a way of dragging you right into the shadows of a scene. His voice makes even the softest betrayal sound like a death sentence. And if you enjoyed that performance, you'll be pleased to know there's much more where that came from. You can find him on YouTube at Dr. Creepen's Vault, where he narrates everything from creepy short fiction to multi-part nightmare sagas like Pharaoh's Curse. He also hosts his podcast, Dr. Creepen's Dungeon, available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the usual haunts. For extras and updates, follow him on Instagram, Facebook, and X. And if you stop by the vault, tell him Nick and the team at Chilling Tales for Dark Nights sent you. He was last here on episode 344, Dark Roots, which featured some of our most unsettling stories of the year. So if you missed that one, make sure to go back and give it a listen after tonight. Now then, let's move on to something deeper and darker. Our next story takes us to a crumbling old house in the woods, the kind passed down through generations, filled with secrets, dust, and silence. But beneath it lies something worse than memory, something that consumes. This is a tale of guilt, of darkness inherited, and of the hole inside us that only gets deeper. Once again, performed by Dr. Creepen, this is The Well by Darius McCorkindale.
In the quaint, isolated town of Autumnvale, nestled deep in the woods, far from prying eyes, stood an old, decrepit house that had been in my family for generations. This house was more than just a structure. It was a living testament to a lineage steeped in mystery and silence. And to the untrained eye, it was just another relic of bygone days, its crumbling facade and sagging roof a mere curiosity for passing hikers. But to me, it was the keeper of my darkest secrets, a silent witness to unspeakable acts. The house had been a majestic sight, a sprawling Victorian mansion built by my great-great-grandfather, a man of considerable wealth and somewhat dubious morality. Its walls were thick and imposing, designed to withstand the harshest elements, or perhaps to conceal the secrets within. The exterior, once painted a cheerful yellow, had long since faded to a sickly mottled grey, the paint peeling in long, curling strips. The windows, tall and narrow, were clouded with grime, their wooden frames rotting and splintered. Ivy and moss crept up the walls, choking the life from the ancient stones and adding to the air of neglect and decay. Inside, the house was a labyrinth of shadowy corridors and cavernous rooms, filled with the relics of its halcyon days. The grand foyer, with its sweeping staircase and ornate chandelier, had long since lost its luster. The chandelier's crystals were coated in dust, and the staircase's banister was sticky with the residue of years of humidity and neglect. The wallpaper, once vibrant with intricate patterns, now hung in tattered strips, revealing the bare, splintered wood beneath. Dust lay thick on every surface, undisturbed by human touch for years, and the floorboards groaned underfoot, their protests echoing through the silent hall. The air inside was thick and oppressive, a miasma of mildew and decay that clung to my skin and filled my lungs with each breath. The scent was a constant reminder of the house's age and the secrets it held. Every creak and groan seemed amplified in the silence, each sound a ghostly reminder of the house's sinister history. The true heart of the house, though, lay beneath it, hidden behind a heavy oak door that was always locked. The entrance to the cellar was a place I avoided unless absolutely necessary. The cellar was a place of perpetual darkness, where the cold seemed to seep into your very bones, and the silence itself was a living, breathing entity. At the far end, concealed behind a stack of forgotten crates and cobweb-covered shelves, was the well. This ancient construct, with its stone walls slick with moss and moisture, was a gaping maw that exuded a chill unlike anything else. It was a seemingly bottomless pit that had swallowed my darkest deeds without a trace. And the well was not just a physical presence. was a constant source of fear and dread, a silent sentry that watched over me my entire life. In the quiet moments of the night, when the wind whispered through the trees and the house settled with ghostly creaks, I could hear it calling to me. The whispers of my past, the voices of those I'd sent to its depths, echoing in my mind, driving me to the brink of madness. The well was both my confessor and my judge, its dark influence ever present, a reminder of the darkness that lurked within me. Over the years, the house became my prison, the well my tormentor. I would wander its halls, haunted by memories of the lives I'd taken, each room a reminder of the irreversible choices I'd made. My old, decrepit house, far from being a mere relic of bygone days, was a living, breathing entity, its decaying walls and shadowy corners home to the darkest chapters of my life. My earliest memory is not of joy or innocence, but of my younger sister's incessant wailing. Oh, her cries echoed through the dusty halls, piercing my young mind like a relentless drill. One sweltering summer day, as her shrill voice grated on my nerves, something inside me snapped. I was only 10 years old, but in that moment, consumed by a rage I couldn't comprehend, I silenced her forever. With trembling hands, I carried her lifeless body to the well in the cellar. Those ancient stones, covered in moss and ivy, seemed to whisper my sins as I lifted the heavy lid. I dropped her into the cold, dark abyss, expecting the guilt to swallow me whole. But the next day, when I nervously peered into the well, her body was gone. The town searched for her, of course. They combed the woods and dredged the nearby river, but she'd vanished without a trace. Eventually, they concluded she'd wandered off and met a tragic fate, and the town mourned a lost child. As for me, I felt an odd mix of relief and confusion. The well had taken her, and in doing so, it had granted me a twisted absolution. Years passed, but the memory of that day never faded. The well remained a silent witness to my crime and a dark secret that only I knew. I told myself it was a one-time aberration, a moment of madness. But deep down, I knew something darker lay dormant within me, waiting to be unleashed again. It was a sweltering summer afternoon, 5 years after my sister's disappearance, when the well demanded its next offering. I was a teenager by this point, navigating the volatile years of adolescence with a simmering anger that I struggled to control. That day, I was with my friend Tommy, a boy whose boisterous laughter and relentless teasing had grated on my nerves for years. We were in the woods behind my house, near the outside entrance to the basement, in the well that had become both a source of dread and a dark fascination for me. The sun beat down on us, the heat amplifying every irritation. We were playing a game that quickly turned into a heated argument. Tommy mocked me, pushing all the wrong buttons, and before I knew it, the world around me turned red. In a blind fury, I lashed out. My hands found a heavy branch, and with one swift, brutal swing, I struck him. The force of the blow was sickening, the crunch of bone and the sudden silence more deafening than his taunts. Tommy crumpled to the ground, his body limp and lifeless. Oh, panic surged through me, but alongside it was the cold, calculating part of my mind that now took over. I knew what I had to do. My hands shook as I dragged his body into the basement and over to the well, the same well that had swallowed my sister all those years ago. The stone rim felt like the edge of an abyss, the darkness below an all-consuming void. With a final, desperate heave, I pushed Tommy's body into the well. I watched as it disappeared into the shadows, the sound of the splash echoing in the silence. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest, the weight of my actions pressing down on me. I spent the night in a restless, feverish sleep, haunted by visions of Tommy's lifeless eyes. The next morning, driven by a morbid curiosity and a sliver of hope, I returned to the well. As I peered into its depths, my breath caught in my throat. Tommy's body was gone. The well had taken him, just as it had taken my sister. The ground around the well was undisturbed, and there was no trace of the horror that had transpired the day before. A strange sense of relief washed over me. The well had once again erased my sin, concealing my darkest deed. But with that relief came a chilling realization. The well's power was real, and was now a part of me, a dark shadow that would follow me for the rest of my life. The years rolled by. I grew into adulthood with the well's dark secret ever present in the back of my mind. Life moved on. I finished school, found a job, even tried to lead a normal life. But the well's shadow never left me. I knew its terrible power, and a part of me feared that one day I might need to use it again. One fateful night, 10 years after the young Tommy's disappearance, I found myself at a local bar, drowning my sorrows in a sea of alcohol. I met Rachel, a beautiful but equally inebriated woman. We bonded over our mutual loneliness and spent the night together. A few weeks later, she called me with the news that shattered my fragile sense of normalcy. She was pregnant. Panic set in. I wasn't ready for the responsibility of fatherhood, and Rachel was adamant about keeping the baby. The fear of being trapped in a life I didn't want consumed me. In a moment of drunken despair, I decided to solve the problem the only way I knew how. I lured her to the woods, near the basement entrance to the well, and ended her life with a cold, calculated precision that even terrified me. The next morning, her body, like all the others, was gone, swallowed by the well's insatiable darkness. Years turned into decades, and the well's secret remained hidden. Some 15 years later, I found myself in the corporate world, working under a boss who was a tyrant. He made my life miserable, his constant belittling and impossible demands driving me to the brink. One day, after yet another humiliating public dressing down, something inside me snapped. I followed him home, confronting him in the parking lot of his apartment complex. The rage that had been simmering for years erupted, and I attacked him, my hands finding a steel pipe left carelessly in the shadows. The deed was done quickly, almost too easily. I transported his body to the well, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. As always, the next day his body had vanished, and I was free from his torment. It was nearly 20 years after my sister's death, and the well had claimed 4 lives. More importantly, each time it had erased my sins, allowing me to carry on with my life as though nothing had happened. But the darkness within me grew with each act. I became increasingly isolated, haunted by the faces of those I'd sacrificed to the well. And then came the day my mother, by now elderly and frail, had become too much for me to handle. She'd been my one faithful companion all these years, the one who'd shared our home without sharing the burden of my dark secrets. She'd always been surprisingly strong for a woman her size, able to perform tasks you'd never expect from such a demure frame. But now she needed constant care, and the cost of putting her in a home was more than I was willing to pay. The solution seemed clear. A twisted logic driven by years of getting away with murder. One night, I slipped into her room and ended her suffering. Now this time, as I dragged her to the well, a strange sense of unease settled over me. The familiar process felt somehow different. I was tainted by a deeper, more personal guilt. I pushed her body into the well and walked away, expecting it to do what it had always done.
That was The Well, written by Darius McCorkindale and voiced by the always chilling Dr. Creepen. Some houses have character, and some characters belong in the house, especially when the house is waiting. That one left me wondering if maybe the creaks in my floorboards aren't just old wood, you know? Once again, if that performance hit home, Dr. Creepen has hundreds more where that came from. Check out Dr. Creepen's Vault on YouTube for his latest releases, plus interactive storytelling threads and full-length horror marathons. His podcast, Dr. Creepen's Dungeon, is streaming on all major platforms, and he's always sharing extras and behind-the-scenes material on Instagram, Facebook, and X. He's not just a narrator, he's a curator of nightmares, and we're lucky to have him. Our final tale tonight ventures far from dry land, and deeper into the kind of abyss you don't come back from. On the Pacific, a search and rescue mission turns into something far darker when the fog rolls in, and with it, something ancient, something hungry. If you're afraid of the ocean, you might want to skip this one, but if you're brave, or foolish, grab your gear and follow us down. Once more performed by Dr. Creepen, this is I'm a Marine Biologist by Darius McCorkindale.
Amid the seemingly infinite expanse of the night-shrouded ocean, a solitary fishing boat ventured forth, its journey towards Bunker Island guided by the lone, silvery light of the moon. As the vessel gently rocked on the ebb and flow of the dark waters, its name, the Elizabeth Dane, barely clung to the peeling paint at the stern, a testament to the countless expeditions it had weathered. Guiding the boat through the obsidian abyss, Captain Vincent, the aged fisherman, stood as a living relic of a lifetime etched by the unforgiving ocean. His beard, as white as the cresting waves, framed a weathered face bearing the wisdom of countless years of maritime toil. The ruddy complexion told stories of sun and wind, while the corners of his mouth, stained with the enduring mark of tobacco, whispered tales of decades adrift on the briny expanse. Enshrouded in the familiar yellow slicker, Captain Vincent commanded the vessel with the steady hand of one who had witnessed the furies of the deep and prevailed. At the boat's bow, Joel Anderson, his appearance a stark contrast to the salted veteran, looked out onto the inky ocean with youthful anticipation. His face, clean-shaven, bore the hallmark of one embarking on a new voyage. As a marine biologist, he considered himself a detective of the oceans. His job was to explore, study, and protect the underwater world. His time was split between diving into the deep, spending time on boats, in labs, and underwater habitats to learn more about the many remaining mysteries of marine life. He examined the habits of fish, whales, and coral, as well as the ecosystems they live in. He considered his job more important now than ever, as he was helping the world understand how pollution, climate change, and human activity had affected the ocean bionetwork. Indeed, he saw his work to preserve and safeguard these crucial ecosystems as vital for future generations. But this had perhaps proven to be one mission too far. He was out of his depth, both figuratively and literally. In his trembling hands, he held a cherished photograph, a relic of happier days. In this frozen moment, he and a woman shared laughter, their joyful expressions an echo of the candles they extinguished together on a birthday cake, a slice of time preserved in smiles and warm memories. The photograph seemed to burn with promise, a light contrasting with the encroaching darkness that lay ahead on this mysterious voyage. Huddled beneath a tattered, salt-stained blanket that offered little protection from the frigid ocean breeze, Tom sat beside Joel. His face was marred by bloodstains, contusions, and there was a deep, haunted weariness etched into his features. The pale, flickering light of a feeble lantern cast eerie shadows upon his visage, making his eyes appear even more bewildered and terrified as he whispered in a trembling voice, "Please, don't make me go. I don't want to go back." Joel, unwavering and resolute, responded to Tom's desperate plea with a steely determination tempered by compassion. "You're taking us back there, Tom. You have to," he urged, though the tension in his voice betrayed the gravity of their situation. Tom's panicked objection was palpable, the sheer terror in his eyes seeming to radiate into the dimly lit cabin. No, I can't do this. I can't, please, he pleaded, his voice quivering like a leaf in the chilling wind. As he spoke, his hands shook uncontrollably, trembling as he drew the thin, threadbare blanket over his face. Kneeling before Tom, Joel moved with measured purpose, retrieving a Smith & Wesson Model 3 revolver from his side. He gently uncovered Tom's face, ensuring their eyes locked in an intense, unspoken understanding that left no room for doubt about the seriousness of their predicament. "Tom, you're taking us to the wreckage," Joel stated firmly, his voice laced with the solemnity of their situation. "Or I'm left with no choice but to shoot you and consign your body to the unforgiving ocean." Fighting back tears and casting a desperate glance toward Captain Vincent, who had shifted his gaze away, perhaps unable to bear the distressing scene unfolding before him, Tom found himself torn between the horrors of the past and the perilous journey that lay ahead. Tom's words hung in the air, heavy with despair and resignation. "Maybe I'm better off with the bullet," he muttered, his voice a mere whisper beneath the vast, star-studded canopy of the night sky. The weight of their situation pressed upon them, and the sense of impending doom loomed ominously over the Elizabeth Dane. Joel, holstering the pistol back in his waistband, turned his gaze back to the water ahead. His steely resolve contrasted with the uncertainty that gnawed at his very soul. The fathomless depths of the ocean seemed to hold secrets darker than the night itself. Sensing the palpable tension gripping the boat, Captain Vincent cleared his throat, a subtle signal that he sought a private conversation with Joel. Tom took this as a cue to descend into the ship's cabin. The cabin, a claustrophobic refuge within the boat's bowels, offered the illusion of sanctuary, if only temporary, from the relentless disquiet that permeated their journey. Alone in the cabin, away from the watchful eyes of Joel and Captain Vincent, Tom gingerly uncovered his bandaged arm. The makeshift dressing revealed a grotesque, festering bite mark, evidence of a malevolent encounter hidden from plain sight. The surrounding skin had taken an ominous shade of black, silent harbinger of the lurking horrors he feared they would soon all face. With each passing moment, the fishing boat continued to cleave through the mysteries of the open ocean, its passengers burdened not only by the weight of their own secrets, but also by the impending dread that clung to them like an unseen shroud. Beneath the vast expanse of the night sky, the Elizabeth Dane forged ahead, its aging mariner, Captain Vincent, navigating with a furrowed brow and a sense of trepidation etched into the weathered lines of his countenance. He voiced his reservations, seeking solace in the counsel of Joel. "Is this really the best idea?" Captain Vincent questioned, the timbre of his voice carrying the weight of uncertainty. "When that man washed ashore, he was babbling gibberish about ocean monsters and such. He wasn't thinking straight." Joel, his determination resolute, responded to the seasoned fisherman with an ironclad resolve. "It's my sister. I must find her. This man survived whatever ordeal they faced. There's a chance she did too." Captain Vincent, still burdened by unease, muttered under his breath, "I just don't like our chances, that's all." The foreboding atmosphere on the boat hung in the air like a damp, oppressive mist. Yet despite the mounting uncertainty and forewarnings of danger, Joel remained unyielding in his commitment. "I'll stay out here as long as it takes," he declared, his voice cutting through the disquiet of the night, as the Elizabeth Dane pressed forward into the heart of the unrelenting ocean. A shroud of thick fog unfurled on the distant horizon, a foreboding and ominous harbinger of uncertainty and danger. As it drew nearer, the vessel seemed to plunge further into an abyss of trepidation. "Looks like we'll be hitting some trouble now," Captain Vincent declared, his voice laced with apprehension, mirroring the palpable tension that clung to the boat like an invisible specter. the fog's advance was relentless, promising an encounter with the unknown. Joel, his resolve tested by the encroaching gloom, turned to confront the approaching curtain of mist, his exasperation finding voice in a muttered oath. Oh, shit. He could feel Tom, who'd emerged now from the cabin below, cowering in fear throughout their harrowing journey, peering over the side of the boat, locking his eyes onto the advancing fog. "We're here," Tom whispered, his voice trembling with dread, as though uttering the words would summon forth the very horrors he feared. Joel, his sense of urgency now mounting, stepped closer to Tom, his voice trembling. "What do you mean? Where's here?" Tom, the weight of his ominous premonition bearing down on him, warned again in a trembling voice. "We're not far from Bunker Island now. The fog, it emerges from the darkness. I'm telling you for the last time not to do this. Death awaits those who venture into the fog." In response, Joel brandished his weapon, emphasizing his firm resolve. "Well then, I'll shoot death in the face." He signaled to Captain Vincent to continue their perilous journey, his fortitude evident as the boat pressed forward, disappearing into the dense white fog. Within the heart of this impenetrable shroud, visibility was limited at best, and an eerie silence enveloped their surroundings, broken only by the soft, rhythmic churning of the boat's engine. Joel, caught in the profound stillness of this fog-enshrouded world, cried out into the void. Caitlin, are you out there?" His desperate pleas dissipated into the enveloping whiteness, leaving only a haunting echo in their wake. The disquieting silence sent an involuntary shiver down Joel's spine, as though the fog itself held some malevolent secret. Tom, huddled beneath his protective blanket, murmured to himself, his words barely audible amidst the eerie calm that surrounded them. Joel seized the opportunity to uncover Tom, revealing the fearful contours of his face. Tom emitted a slight scream, instinctively shielding his injured arm, his gaze reflecting a primal fear. "You've brought death upon us," Tom quivered, the weight of his ominous premonition manifesting in his trembling voice. Desperate for answers, Joel pressed Tom for information, demanding, "Where's my sister? Where's the boat?" Yet all Tom could do was shake his head, offering no assistance, his eyes mirroring the fear that coursed through him. It was then that a sinister presence brushed against the fishing boat, causing it to sway and pitch, as though the very ocean itself had come to life in response to their incursion into the fog-shrouded abyss. "What was that?" Joel's voice quivered with trepidation as he inquired, his eyes straining against the fog that shrouded their vision. It was a thick, impenetrable veil that left them in a world of eerie darkness. However, amidst this disorienting haze, a faint clearing beckoned in the distance, catching his attention. He leaned forward and pointed toward that mysterious rift in the otherwise unyielding mist, seeking guidance from Captain Vincent, who responded with a solemn nod as they steered the vessel towards that beckoning respite. As the fishing boat ventured deeper into the clearing, an unsettling sight began to manifest itself before them. Ghostly silence descended, broken only by the boat's engine and the occasional creaking of the aging vessel. There, adrift in the water, lay a wretched and mangled boat, bearing the ghastly scars of relentless destruction. The chilling signs of a gruesome struggle were etched onto its battered form, as bloodstains, like macabre war paint, smeared across its sides. "Jesus Christ," Joel whispered in shock, his voice barely more than a murmur. The oppressive aura of death hung in the air, a suffocating presence that gripped their very hearts. Captain Vincent, his face now etched with concern, maneuvered the fishing boat closer to the grim spectacle, allowing Joel to bridge the gap between the two vessels. With a mixture of anticipation and dread, Joel scrambled over the rail and onto the deck of the second boat, his determination unwavering. The decrepit vessel beneath his feet struggled against the relentless ocean, the threat of being swallowed by the abyss ever present. Bore the disfiguring marks of countless maritime voyages, mysterious barnacles clinging to its surface like sinister parasites. Joel's eyes darted around the vessel, each scar and strange anomaly a puzzle waiting to be solved. Yet a sense of denial washed over him as he inspected the name engraved on the stern. "Well, it's her boat. Where is she?" Joel muttered to himself, his voice tinged with disbelief and a growing sense of dread. Turning to Tom, his voice quivered as he called for assistance. "Tom, get over here. Help me look for her." Tom, however, remained ensconced beneath his protective blanket, his fear evident in every quiver and shudder. He dared not leave the comforting cocoon of the tattered fabric, as if it were a shield against the horrors that lurked beyond. With his trademark resolve, Joel retrieved a flashlight from his side, his trembling hands fumbling for the switch. With a click, the beam of light cut through the pervasive gloom, illuminating the sinister scene that lay before him. He aimed the flashlight toward the lifeless body suspended above, revealing the grisly tableau in all its horrifying detail. The victim's exposed flesh bore a disconcerting tapestry of strange hieroglyphic symbols, the inexplicable markings that hinted at the horrors this forsaken place had witnessed. And yet his frantic search for Caitlin aboard the vessel proved fruitless, the profound silence of the ocean answering him with only emptiness. Suddenly, a peculiar sound, discordant and unsettling, echoed through the air. Joel's heart quickened as he pointed his flashlight toward the source, anxiously scanning the darkening surroundings. His voice pierced the impending storm, filled with concern and mounting dread, as he called out into the looming gloom. "Caitlin!" The word hung in the air like a prayer, a desperate plea for an answer amidst the encroaching tempest and the mysteries of the ocean. With growing apprehension gnawing at his gut, Joel cast his gaze out across the vast expanse of the water, straining his eyes to discern the distant figure adrift. It clung desperately to a broken piece of wood, isolated in the midst of uncertainty, like a lost soul in the abyss. "Hey, she's over here, guys, she's alive!" Joel's voice rang out, resolute purpose in his tone, a beacon of hope amidst the engulfing darkness. Without a moment's hesitation, he hurled himself into the water, the chill and the unknown beneath the surface failing to deter his resolve. Stroke after stroke, he swam resolutely towards this distant figure, each stroke carving a path towards his sibling. In the cockpit of the vessel, Captain Vincent demonstrated his seasoned prowess, skillfully maneuvering the fishing boat closer to Caitlin's precarious location. Each maneuver was a heartbeat, each second an eternity, as the churning waves conspired to keep the drowning figure just out of reach. But the two men on the fishing boat, with their eyes fixed on Caitlin's distant form, were fueled by a sense of urgency that refused to yield. Joel, his arms propelling him through the frigid water, reached her side at last. He grasped her, an anchor in the tumultuous ocean, and began the arduous swim back to the safety of the Elizabeth Dane. Captain Vincent, ever vigilant, leaned over the side, his strong arms outstretched to aid in the rescue effort. Together they hauled Caitlin aboard, her body limp and soaked, yet brimming with life. Amid the confined space of the fishing boat, Captain Vincent's gaze fell upon Caitlin, his weathered features contorting with both relief and then mounting horror. He motioned towards her, urgently tugging at Joel's shoulder to ensure his attention. Their labored breaths hung heavy in the air. "Yeah, Joel, look," Captain Vincent whispered, his voice quivering like the trembling hands of a condemned man on death row. Joel's eyes followed the unsteady motion of Captain Vincent's finger, settling upon Caitlin as she lay before them. Her body exhibited a bewildering and unsettling metamorphosis, like some cruel twist of nature's design. On the sides of her neck, gills swayed in rhythm, their movements a haunting echo of life's primal origins, a pulse that seemed to long for the embrace of water. "What is that?" Joel uttered in bewilderment. Tom, who had finally found the strength to emerge from his sanctuary of despair below, pointed a trembling finger at Caitlin, his gaze reflecting an air of dread that had settled deep within his soul. "She's infected. She's one of them," Tom declared, his voice a somber dirge hinting at the horrors the men had yet to fathom. Tom's trembling finger, still extended towards Caitlin, suddenly drew his attention to an alarming revelation. His own hands were now undergoing a grotesque transformation. They glistened with a slimy sheen, their once familiar digits slowly becoming webbed appendages. Panic surged through him like an electric shock. With a sinking feeling, he hastily withdrew his hand, concealing the shocking metamorphosis from view. But as if the nightmare had just begun, a sinister appendage emerged from the water, snaked its way over the edge of the boat and coiled around Tom's neck with a malevolent grip. And in an instant of unimaginable horror, the appendage, like some merciless executioner, yanked Tom overboard and into the unfathomable abyss. In the blink of an eye, his cries for salvation were swallowed by the voracious ocean. "What the hell was that?" Joel's voice, still quivering in terror, echoed over the raging waters, demanding an answer that seemed hopelessly out of reach. With a tremor in their hearts, he and Captain Vincent sprinted towards the starboard side of the boat, their eyes locking onto an unimaginable sight beneath the water's surface. There, in the depths of the abyss, a colossal yellow eye peered back at them, an unblinking guardian of the void below. Stricken with fear, the men tumbled backward onto the deck, their bodies entwined with a sense of collective dread. The heavens too seemed to conspire against them, unleashing a torrential downpour that pounded the boat like the wrath of an angry god, drowning out their words and adding to the disorienting pandemonium. "We need to get the hell out of here now." Joel's voice, filled with desperation, rang out once more, but the tempestuous winds and unforgiving rain carried his words away, lost amidst the chaos of the night. With each passing moment, the nightmarish ordeal on board the Elizabeth Dane deepened. Captain Vincent's determined nod affirmed their need to escape the creeping, otherworldly terror that had beset them. He wasted no time, hastening towards the cabin where the throbbing heart of their vessel lay, the engine. However, fate had other cruel plans, and their desperate escape attempt was met with a formidable setback. Black smoke unfurled from the engine room, an ominous sign of trouble and impending doom. "Oh, that is not good," Joel muttered, his voice laden with unease as he recognized the gravity of their predicament. Swiftly, he reached for his gun, his knuckles white from the tension, and knelt beside Caitlin, who lay before him, a living enigma. "Caitlin, can you hear me? Sis, are you all right?" he asked, the tremor of hope warring with the uncertainty in his voice. Her clouded eyes slowly blinked open, but the response that emanated from her frail form was anything but reassuring. Caitlin's fragile lips parted. She let out a blood-curdling scream, the sound of anguish and transformation, sending shockwaves through Joel's already strained nerves. The speed of her transformation was relentless. As he watched in shock, her body convulsed, like a puppet in the throes of some unforeseen malevolent force. Her fragile human form succumbed to the emergence of grotesque features, the skin along her spine splitting open to reveal an unsettling sight. Red, translucent fins burst forth like grotesque blossoms, an indication of the monstrous metamorphosis that was consuming his beloved sister. Amid the chaos and despair, Caitlin's grotesque form lunged at Joel, casting both of them into the unforgiving waters. Below the surface, the relentless grip of bodily conversion continued its cruel dance. Her once human fingers elongated and fused together, webbing stretching between them, like some grotesque simile of aquatic life. Gasping for air, Joel fought his way back to the water's surface. The tempest raged on around him, but he somehow found the strength to persevere. Struggling, he swam back to the fishing boat, hoisting himself aboard in a struggle against the relentless currents. He targeted the stern for his ascent, the one area he could reach without requiring assistance. His eyes now scanned the boat's interior, a frantic search for his only means of defense. His heart sank as he realized that the gun he'd so desperately clung to was now lost to the unforgiving ocean. In the cabin, a beacon of hope emerged as Captain Vincent's relentless efforts bore fruit, the engine roaring back to life. The boat, however, battered by the relentless rain, seemed to shudder as if in protest. Yet amidst the tumultuous deluge, the respite they had prayed for was but a fleeting illusion. In that moment, another sinister tentacle emerged from the depths, its serpentine form lashing out with malevolence. It struck at Joel and Captain Vincent, damaging the boat's mast with ruthless force, leaving destruction and chaos in its wake. The monstrous appendage then vanished once more beneath the turbulent waves, returning to the abyss from which it had come. As the boat teetered on the brink of destruction, two webbed hands, formerly the very image of humanity and kinship, reached the surface. They emerged as grotesque perversions of their former selves, severed from the bonds of familiarity by an eerie and ominous transformation. Caitlin's once cherished hands now harbored rows of jagged, razor-sharp appendages, her fingers clawing at the wooden deck of the boat. With a surreal grace, she inched closer, her nails scraping across the wooden planks, her lower extremities now fused into a mermaid-like tail. "Joe, help me." His haunting whisper escaped her now monstrous maw. The voice was an agonized plea, hanging in the air like a spectral echo. As she crept closer, the darkness within her eyes seemed to devour what little remained of her humanity, leaving only a haunting shell of the sister that Joel had once known. Captain Vincent, his spirit shaken yet resolute, voiced a stark warning, his words laden with the gravity of their situation. "We need to leave now. That's not your sister anymore." With steady purpose, he marched back to the helm, leaving Tom, who was succumbing to the same horrifying transformation, stranded on the treacherous deck. The confrontation had escalated into a nightmarish representation of grotesque transformation. Tom's once human visage had given way to a dreadful amalgamation of scales, yellowed eyes, and gills that clung to the sides of his neck like grotesque adornments. The initial wound, once seemingly a mere point of injury, now pulsated ominously, a macabre indication of the relentless metamorphosis that had claimed him. With ungodly determination, Tom extended his mutated arm towards Captain Vincent, his intention chillingly clear. A harrowing struggle unfolded between the two former companions, the dance of survival in this nightmarish abyss taking on an even darker hue. Then, with a dreadful and unholy act, Tom spat forth a vile black tar-like substance onto Captain Vincent's unsuspecting face. The old mariner stumbled back, disoriented and stricken, before finally toppling over the side of the boat. Tom, now a nightmarish shadow of his former self, wasted no time. He leapt into the water, pursuing Captain Vincent into the inky depths below. In this moment of absolute desperation, Joel's hands fumbled for salvation. He grasped a weathered tin case, his heart pounding in tandem with his racing thoughts. The case proved to be a stubborn adversary, yet with firm resolve he succeeded in wrestling it open. Inside, 2 red flares remained, an admittedly limited lifeline in the face of such profound horror. Grimly ascending the partly damaged mast, Joel braced himself against the relentless deluge. Rain lashed at his face with merciless intensity, making it a battle to keep his eyes open and fix his gaze on the task at hand. His heart raced. Terror clung to his very soul, yet he understood the gravity of the situation. He took aim with the flare gun, determined to unleash his final beacon of hope. In a defiant burst, a single red flare erupted from the gun's muzzle, igniting the bleak, moonlit night with its vivid pinkish-red illumination. The ocean itself seemed to shudder in response, revealing its ominous secrets. Joel's heart trembled as he bore witness to the surreal spectacle unveiled by the stark brilliance of the flare. Hundreds of unworldly eyes, grotesque and ghastly, stared back at him from the churning surface of the water, like the eyes of malevolent spirits awakened by his act of defiance. "Oh my God," he gasped, his voice trembling in the face of such grotesque horror. One by one, these creatures, each more nightmarish than the last, began their relentless ascent, hauling themselves onto the fishing boat. Joel's desperate gaze descended to the transformed Caitlin, who reached out to him with an almost mournful expression in her eyes. The poignant bond of brotherly love mixed with a profound sense of dread as he whispered, "I'm sorry, Caitlin." Tears, indistinguishable from the relentless rain, trickled down his rain-slicked face. With a sense of tragic inevitability, he reloaded the flare gun, knowing that this was his last chance. Every fiber of his being screamed against what he was about to do, yet the dire circumstances left him with no choice. He pointed the gun at Caitlin, his hand trembling with the weight of his choice, and in a voice that bore the weight of his sacrifice, he said, "God, please forgive me." With a resolute pull of the trigger, the flare erupted into a searing blaze, its fiery tendrils reaching out to claim Caitlin's grotesque form. In an instant, the sticky substance that coated her body reacted to the flare, and she was engulfed in a flaming inferno. Her agonized screams pierced the night, the fiery maelstrom she became flinging burning fragments in all directions. The other monstrous creatures recoiled, their misshapen features twisted in fear and dread as they witnessed the fate that had befallen their once kindred. The fishing boat, now partially consumed by the blaze, bore the fiery scars of the struggle against these grotesque abominations. Yet remarkably, the relentless rain battled against the encroaching flames, its ceaseless deluge suppressing the inferno. As Joel grasped onto the mast amid the chaos, his world teetering on the precipice of madness and despair, his gaze was drawn to a single distant light. It flickered in the night, a slender ray of hope in an ocean of darkness. The glimmer of salvation beckoned in the distance, a lifeline reaching out to him from the abyss. With newfound resolve, Joel clung to the last vestiges of his will, shouting into the night, "Hey, over here, help!" The hideous creatures around him, momentarily disoriented by the fiery conflagration, began to reclaim their place. The ocean itself seemed to recoil from the manifestation of this stranger's light. Yet the eerie tranquility was fleeting, and their dark embrace threatened to close in once more. The boat's once smoldering deck now hissed and cooled as the relentless rain waged a battle against the burgeoning flames, preventing further catastrophe for the moment. Amid the lingering scent of charred wood and the palpable tension that clung to the air, Joel's eyes again caught this glimmer of hope. It was nearer now. There, a solitary light broke through the darkness, beckoning like a guiding star. Any thoughts that he had imagined this were now banished. A boat, its form gradually emerging from the shroud of night, was making its way toward Joel's beleaguered vessel. "Hey, over here, help!" he bellowed. The sound of his own voice carried away by the restless wind and absorbed by the expanse of the ocean. Yet this cry was not in vain. The approaching boat, like a guardian angel descending from the heavens, continued its steadfast approach, its engine a persistent beacon of hope. Relief cascaded over Joel like a cleansing wave as he realized that help was on the way. His shouts, though born of despair, had reached to sympathetic ears. The abominable tentacles, restless in their pursuit of destruction, slithered once more from the inky depths, wrapping around the beleaguered fishing boat with a sinister embrace. The vessel, already badly damaged by the harrowing events that had unfolded, protested against this fresh assault, its wooden bones creaking and groaning in protest under the relentless pressure of this otherworldly appendage. Tighter they gripped, tighter still. Joel clung to the mast for dear life as the boat succumbed to the unfathomable might of the tentacles. With a deafening crack, the boat splintered in two, like a fragile twig in the grasp of an otherworldly force. Water rushed in, swallowing the wreckage and all who clung to it. All that remained for Joel to do was hope that the boat would reach him in time.
That was I'm a Marine Biologist, written by Darius McCorkindale and performed by tonight's guest, Dr. Creepen. They say the ocean is the last unexplored frontier, and maybe that's for a reason. And if anything stares back at you from the deep, don't blink. A big thanks again to Dr. Creepen for joining us for all 3 of tonight's tales. If you're not already subscribed to his work, now's the time. Head over to Dr. Creepen's Vault on YouTube or search for Dr. Creepen's Dungeon wherever you listen to podcasts. You'll find stories long and short, eerie and existential. Some adapted from folklore, others from the shadows of your own mind. He was also featured on episode 344, Dark Roots, which was one of our standout releases this year. So don't miss it if you want even more of his spine-chilling performances. And wherever you find him, tell him we sent you. He'll know what that means. If tonight's stories have made you check under your bed or double-check your locks, don't keep it to yourself. Leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune in. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment to tell us which story gave you the worst dreams. Was it the well, the ribbons, or the thing in the fog? Want more horror? Head over to chillingtalesfordarknights.com and become a patron. For $7.99 a month, or less with an annual plan, you'll get ad-free access, early releases, and bonus episodes you won't find anywhere else. You'll also help us keep producing the horror you love. And don't forget, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Come share your thoughts, your fears, or your fan theories. We're always listening. I've been your host, Nick Goroff, and it's been an honor leading you into the dark. Join us again next Monday and Wednesday for more stories that won't stay buried. Until next time, when we once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Sweet dreams, listeners. Sweet dreams.
Chilling tales for dark nights.